She got into the car and I knew something was wrong, not because she was crying, not because she was angry, but because she wasn't anything at all. No spark, no weight to her movements, just silence sitting where energy should have been. That kind of silence is louder than screaming. I asked how school was, a shrug. I asked if something happened, a pause so long it felt heavier than an answer. Then she said it quietly, like she didn't want the question to exist once it left her mouth. She asked if it ever feels like nothing you do actually matters. That question doesn't come from one bad day. It comes from a slow erosion, from trying and not feeling seen, from effort that disappears into the air, from living in a world that tells you your worth must be proven, displayed, counted. I've lived long enough to recognize that look. I've worn it myself, more times than I'd like to admit. I've watched decades pass. I've seen entire systems rise and collapse. I've seen people lose everything overnight and others climb for years only to realize they were climbing the wrong wall. And that question, does any of this matter, has followed every generation like a shadow. The difference is this: when you're young, it feels like a verdict. When you're old, it feels like a misunderstanding. We're taught early that mattering means being visible, being impressive, being talked about. That if your name isn't echoed somewhere beyond your own life, then your life must have been small. So people chase noise. They chase applause. They chase the illusion of importance. They trade peace for recognition and then wonder why they still feel empty when they get it. What no one tells you is this: the moments that shape lives rarely announce themselves. They don't feel historic while they're happening. They feel boring, repetitive, easy to overlook. I once knew someone who lived quietly, predictably, and without ambition that the world would ever applaud. Same routine, same work, same small circle of people. From the outside, nothing remarkable. No milestones worth celebrating publicly. And yet, when that life ended, the room filled with people carrying stories they'd been holding for decades. Stories about being noticed when no one else paid attention. About being encouraged when giving up felt logical. About being believed in before they believed in themselves. That's when it became clear. Impact doesn't look like impact from the inside. The most meaningful lives often feel painfully ordinary to the person living them. We get this backwards. We think mattering is loud. It isn't. It's quiet. It's personal. It happens in places no one records. In conversations no one posts. In choices no one applauds. There was a time when everything in my life felt like it was slipping. Work wasn't working. Sleep wasn't coming. I was exhausted in ways rest couldn't fix. One night, I sat alone, trying to decide whether to escape into something that would numb me, or face another night with my thoughts. And someone who barely knew me, interrupted that moment. Not with wisdom, not with advice, just presence. An invitation to sit somewhere warm and talk about nothing important. Nothing important, except it was. That small interruption changed the direction of that night. And sometimes that's all it takes. A slight shift. A door that stays closed because someone stood in the way without even knowing it. That's the part that's hard to accept. You don't get confirmation. You don't get proof. You don't get to know which moments mattered. You just move forward, unaware that something small you did became a turning point for someone else. And because there's no evidence, we assume it didn't count. We underestimate ordinary kindness because it doesn't feel powerful. We dismiss patience because it doesn't look productive. We overlook consistency because it doesn't create excitement. But those are the exact things that shape people. We live in a time that glorifies extremes. Big wins, big failures, big stories. But life isn't built from highlights. It's built from repetition, from showing up again, from staying when leaving would be easier, from listening when talking would feel better. If you're waiting for your life to feel meaningful, you might be waiting for the wrong signal. Meaning doesn't arrive as a feeling. It arrives as responsibility, as attention, as care. And most of the time, it arrives disguised as inconvenience. Asterisk, there are things people remember long after they forget facts, titles, and achievements. They remember how you made them feel when they were small, when they were afraid, when they were overwhelmed, when they thought no one noticed. I've seen fears dissolve, not through force, but through patience. 15 minutes at a time, day after day. No speeches, no pressure. Just standing there, steady, until fear ran out of fuel. Years later, the person who benefited barely remembers the process. But the absence of that fear follows them for life. That's how mattering works. It erases problems so quietly that no one notices they were ever there. We're obsessed with legacy. But legacy isn't something you build intentionally. It's something that happens accidentally when you live honestly around other people. When you take responsibility for the space you occupy. When your presence makes a room lighter instead of heavier. Most of what holds the world together will never be documented. Parents waking up exhausted. Workers doing their jobs without cutting corners. People checking in when something feels off. Strangers choosing decency when no one is watching. These acts don't feel heroic, but without them, everything collapses. The pressure to be exceptional has done more damage than failure ever could. It convinces people that if they aren't extraordinary, they are irrelevant. That if their life doesn't impress strangers, it doesn't count. So they overlook the people right in front of them while chasing validation from people who don't know their name. If you want to know whether you matter, don't ask how many people know you. Ask who would feel the difference if you weren't there. Ask who relaxes when you walk into the room. Ask who feels safe enough to be honest around you. Ask who grows because you stayed patient when you could have walked away. Those answers won't inflate your ego, but they'll tell the truth. The older I get, the clearer it becomes. Almost everything we chase fades. Status dissolves. Achievements blur. Recognition evaporates faster than you expect. But presence doesn't fade. Kindness doesn't expire. Being seen at the right moment echoes forward in ways no accomplishment ever could. I saw it recently in the face of someone who looked like they were carrying too much. Just a few words. Just a moment of real attention. Nothing that would make a difference on paper. But on a human level, it mattered. And that's the level that counts. We keep asking the wrong question. We ask whether we matter in a measurable way, whether we're important, whether we're exceptional. But mattering isn't about scale. It's about proximity. It's about the people close enough to be affected by your choices. Your life doesn't need to be impressive. It needs to be attentive, honest, grounded in care. That's harder than it sounds, because attention costs energy. Honesty costs comfort. Kindness costs time. And none of it comes with applause. But that's where real significance lives. Not in the spotlight. In the quiet consistency of being human with other humans. When I look back, I don't think about what I achieved. I think about who I showed up for. The moments I stayed present instead of distracted. The times I listened instead of waiting to speak. The choices I made when no one was keeping score. Those moments didn't feel important at the time. They felt small. But now I see them clearly. They were everything. So if you're wondering whether what you're doing matters, here's the truth. It probably does, just not in the way you're measuring. It matters in the moments you'll never get credit for. In the patience you show when you're tired. In the honesty you choose when lying would be easier. In the help you offer when walking away would be simpler. Your life doesn't need to be loud to be meaningful. It needs to be real. And real things last. If you're still listening, maybe it's because part of you already knows this. Maybe you just needed someone to say it out loud. Asterisk.